I always thought that my marriage to Jessica was solid. We met in college and got married right after graduation. For the first few years, everything was perfect: date nights, spontaneous trips, and those lazy Sundays where we just binge-watch our favorite shows together. Jessica was smart, funny, and ambitious, always pushing me to do better. But lately, I'd started sensing a shift. At first, it was subtle. She seemed a bit more distracted, often glued to her phone, texting late into the night. I brushed it off as work stress. She had been promoted recently and was taking on more responsibilities. But the signs kept piling up. She'd leave for girls' nights more frequently and came home hours late, claiming she lost track of time. I started to feel uneasy, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Trust was important, right? Then, one Friday night, everything changed. I was home early from work, planning to surprise her with a nice dinner. I put on some music, set the table, and even whipped up her favorite meal. The clock ticked past the time I thought she'd be home. I texted her and she didn't respond. A few hours later, the door finally creaked open and she stumbled in, smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't the usual floral scent she wore. This was something different, something seductive. I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut, but it was hard. She had a way of flinging excuses like confetti, totally dismissing my concerns about her being late. "Sorry, babe, got caught up at Sarah's place. You know how it is," she said with a bright smile that felt forced. But something in her eyes flickered, a shadow of guilt that was hard to miss. I decided to let it go that night. Instead, I focused on the moment, but deep down I was unsettled. I spent the weekend obsessing over her behavior, my mind racing through scenarios. I had a gut feeling that there was more to her late nights than just girl time. The following week, I had the day off, and while Jessica was at work, I kept my mind occupied with chores. As I was cleaning out the closet, I found an envelope tucked away in the back. It was from a hotel, dated just a week before. My heart raced as I opened it to find a receipt for a room booked under her name. I fumbled through it and noticed the date lined up with one of those girls' nights she had told me about. I couldn't believe it. My hands trembled as I put the papers down. What was going on? Who was she with? I needed answers, and fast. That evening I confronted her. "Hey Jess, can you explain this?" I held the receipt in front of her, my voice steady but laced with anger. I watched as her expression shifted from surprise to defensive. "What the hell is that?" she snapped, tossing her hair back. "Don't play dumb. I found this in our closet. Why were you at a hotel?" I demanded, every word tasting bitter in my mouth. She stammered for a moment, searching for words. "It's not what you think. I was with Sarah and we were just what? Having a girls' night in a hotel." I interrupted, my frustration boiling over. "I know. I mean, I didn't want to tell you because you'd freak out." I felt like I was being punched in the gut. This wasn't just a lie, this was an entire web of deceit. "Freak out? You think I'd freak out about you cheating on me?" I roared, my voice echoing in the room. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as her expression morphed from defiance into something resembling fear. There was a moment where I felt a flicker of compassion, but it quickly dissipated. I was done feeling sorry for her. "We're not done here," I said, my heart pounding. I had to find out the truth, and I was going to make her confess. That night, as she attempted to paint a picture of innocence, I pushed for more. "Who was it, Jess? Who did you cheat with?" And then she finally slipped, revealing a name that shattered my world. "It's Brian. He's dating your sister, Emily." In that moment, everything I had known about my wife and our life together collapsed like a house of cards. Brian, my sister's boyfriend, of all people. I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, and an overwhelming urge for revenge. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. It was about family. And in that moment, a dark plan began to form in my mind. I realized that I had to play this right. I would make sure Jessica faced consequences. I would let my sister ruin her life for me. The gears began to turn, and I felt a sense of clarity emerging from the chaos. I wouldn't let this betrayal slide. I'd make sure Jessica felt the weight of her actions. My heart raced at the thought. What would my sister say when she found out about the affair? This was just the beginning. After that confrontation, I didn't sleep a wink. My mind was racing, and every thought revolved around revenge. I felt like a puppet master, strings in my hands, plotting the downfall of my unfaithful wife. Jessica fell asleep on the couch, her face twisted in a troubled expression, likely fearing the consequences of her betrayal. I couldn't muster any sympathy. The next day, I decided to take a strategic approach. I needed to gather evidence, something solid that would crush Jessica's facade. I started by following her. It felt wrong, invasive even, but I had to know the extent of her affair. So I discreetly followed her after work the next day. I parked a few blocks away from her office and waited. Time dragged on and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. When she finally emerged, she walked with a bounce in her step, the kind I hadn't seen for months. She got into her car and pulled away. I followed her, determined and focused. She didn't go home. Instead, she drove to a bar on the outskirts of town. I parked a safe distance away and watched as she entered. It felt surreal, watching the woman I loved walk into a place of betrayal. I pulled out my phone and snapped a few pictures, documenting every detail. I couldn't believe I was doing this, but I felt like I was in a movie, the protagonist seeking justice. After about an hour, my heart dropped when I saw Brian walk into the bar. He flashed that charming smile that had fooled so many, including my sister. Jessica lit up when she saw him, practically running into his arms. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak as I watched them together, laughing and whispering intimately. They sat at a booth, and I kept my distance, but it was impossible to ignore the reality unfolding before me. They were all over each other, and the way Jessica looked at him was a stark contrast to the way she'd looked at me in recent months, filled with lust and longing. I snapped more pictures, capturing their connection, every kiss, every yearning glance. After what felt like an eternity, I decided I had enough evidence to confront both of them. My heart raced with anticipation and dread. I felt a sense of power, but it was tainted with the knowledge of how much I'd have to hurt my sister in the process. I knew it would devastate her, but I was convinced it was the only way to make Jessica feel the weight of her betrayal. The next day I called Emily, my sister. "Hey, can you come over? I need to talk to you about something important." "Sure, what's up?" she replied, sounding cheerful. I could sense her happiness through the phone, and it twisted my gut. "Just come over, okay?" I said, cutting the small talk. When she arrived, I felt a rush of anxiety. I didn't want to hurt her, but I needed her to know the truth. I led her to the living room and asked her to sit down. Her smile faded as she sensed the seriousness of the moment. "Emily, I need to show you something. It's about Jessica." Her brow furrowed, confusion evident on her face. I pulled out my phone and handed it to her, watching her expression change as she scrolled through the pictures I had taken at the bar. "What the hell is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Jessica is cheating on me with Brian." The silence that followed was suffocating. I could see the gears turning in her mind, the betrayal sinking in. "No, this isn't possible. You must be mistaken," she said, her voice rising in disbelief. "I wish I were Emily, but I watched them together. You deserve to know." I watched as the shock morphed into anger. She shoved the phone back at me, her eyes blazing. "I can't believe this. How could she do this to you? How could he do this to me?" "It's true. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to hurt you, but this is bigger than us now." Emily's face paled as reality set in. The sister I grew up with was heartbroken, and it hurt to see her like this. "I can't believe I was dating a liar. I thought he was the one." I felt a pang of guilt for putting her in this position, but I also knew that I had to keep pressing. "I need you to confront them to find out the truth. I want to retaliate, but I can't do this alone." Her expression hardened as she processed what I was asking. "You want me to confront them like an interrogation? I can't do that." "You have to, Emily. You deserve to know how low Brian sinks, how fake Jessica is. They need to pay for their betrayal." I watched as she wrestled with the idea, her face a mixture of hurt and anger. I knew it was a lot to ask, but I also knew that if I didn't push her into action, Jessica would never truly feel the consequences of her actions. After a long silence, Emily finally nodded, resolve hardening in her eyes. "Okay, I'll do it. I don't know how I'll act or what I'll say, but I'll confront them." As she left, I felt a surge of exhilaration mixed with trepidation. I was now on a path of revenge, and while it felt empowering, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was going to lead to chaos. I hoped that whatever happened next would unleash the storm I had been waiting for. Little did I know, the real fallout was just beginning. The next few days were a blur of anticipation and dread. I watched as Emily prepared herself to confront Brian and Jessica, and I knew that once she did, everything would change. Part of me felt guilty, but the other half was eager for the inevitable explosion. I was ready to see Jessica squirm. I was ready for the truth to come crashing down. The day Emily decided to confront Brian and Jessica was looming. I could feel the tension in my chest as I paced around my apartment, anxiously awaiting news. I had crafted this plan meticulously, but now that the time had come, my stomach churned with nerves. I wasn't the one facing them, my sister was, and I couldn't shake the guilt of dragging her into my mess. Still, I reminded myself that this wasn't just about me, it was about justice, about making them pay for the betrayal. Emily texted me that morning confirming she would meet Brian at his apartment later that day. "I'll record the conversation," she said. "I want to have proof of what he says." I smiled at her determination. I knew she was angry, and anger was a powerful motivator. As the hours slipped by, my anxiety grew. I kept checking my phone, refreshing the messages, hoping for updates. My heart raced when I finally saw a new notification from Emily. "It's done. I'm on my way to your place." I felt a mix of dread and excitement. I was about to hear how the confrontation went down. When she arrived, I could see the storm brewing behind her eyes. She stepped inside, a whirlwind of emotions, and I immediately noticed that her face was flushed. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Let's talk in the living room," she replied, rushing past me like a tornado. I followed her, my heart pounding in my chest. Once we were seated, Emily leaned in, her voice trembling with emotion. "I can't believe what I heard. Tell me everything," I urged her, my pulse quickening. "I showed up at his apartment and he looked shocked to see me. I told him I needed to talk and he invited me in. I didn't waste time, I hit him with your suspicions right away." "Good," I said, feeling a sense of satisfaction. "What did he say?" He played dumb at first, acting like he had no idea what I was talking about. But then I pulled out my phone and played the recording of their conversation. I leaned forward, heart racing. "What did he say?" Emily's face twisted in disbelief. "He tried to deny everything, but when I confronted him with the evidence, he finally admitted it. He said he was in love with Jessica and that they were planning to leave us for each other." The words hit me like a slap to the face. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, but mostly disbelief. I never thought it would be this deep. "How did you react?" I was furious. I couldn't believe how casually he spoke about it. It felt like he was dismissing everything. I told him that I couldn't believe he would betray me like that, not just you but me too." Emily's voice cracked and I could see the tears welling in her eyes. "He had the audacity to say that it was your fault for not being around enough and that Jessica was always there for him when he needed someone." I felt a surge of anger. What a coward, blaming me for their affair, unbelievable. I clenched my fists, frustration boiling within me. I told him I'd never forgive him for this. Then I called Jessica. I didn't even let him respond, I just left," Emily said, her emotions spilling over. "I couldn't stand to be in the same room as him." "Did you tell Jessica what he said?" "I tried, but when I called her, she acted all innocent, like she had no idea what I was talking about. She swore she would never do something like that to me." I shook my head in disbelief. "So she's still lying after everything?" Emily nodded, wiping her eyes. "She is. She's made her choice and it's not us." In that moment, I felt a mixture of empowerment and heartbreak. I had wanted revenge, and now I had it in the form of my sister's betrayal, but it didn't feel great. I was left with the reality that both Jessica and Brian had chosen to hurt us, and I felt the weight of the aftermath crashing down. "Emily, I'm so sorry for putting you through this," I said, reaching out to comfort her. "You didn't deserve any of this." She looked at me, her expression softening. "This isn't your fault. It's their fault for being selfish. I just can't believe how naive I was to trust him." I took a deep breath, trying to redirect my anger. "We need to confront them together. If they think they can get away with this, they're dead wrong. I want both of them to pay for what they've done." Emily's eyes lit up with determination. "You're right. We need to show them that their actions have consequences. I won't let them walk away unscathed." They think they can just ruin our lives and move on. I nodded, feeling a surge of adrenaline. Exactly. Let's make a plan. We need to think this through. We spent the next few hours crafting our strategy. It was clear that we couldn't confront them separately. We needed to catch them together so we would have the upper hand. After all, they had betrayed us in the most intimate way possible, and it was time to turn the tables. As night fell, we decided we would meet them the next day. I sent Jessica a text asking her to meet me at a local cafe. I needed her to think it was a casual catch-up, a chance to talk about what had happened. But deep down, I knew it was going to be anything but casual. The thought of finally confronting Jessica face to face filled me with a mix of dread and anticipation. I couldn't wait to see the look on her face when I revealed I knew everything. The pieces were falling into place, and I felt a sense of closure starting to form, even if only temporarily. As we finalized our plan for the next day, I felt the weight of the world lifting off my shoulders. Jessica and Brian were about to face the consequences of their betrayal, and I was ready to make them squirm. The calm before the storm was almost peaceful, but I knew that chaos was just around the corner. The morning of the confrontation arrived with an air of tension. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me as I paced back and forth in my apartment, waiting for Emily to arrive. We had agreed to meet Jessica at the cafe around noon, and I wanted to make sure we were both prepared. I could hardly eat breakfast, my stomach twisted in knots. Emily arrived right on time, and I could see the determination in her eyes. She looked ready for battle, and I was grateful to have her by my side. We sat down to plan our strategy one last time, making sure we were on the same page. Remember, we have to keep our emotions in check, I reminded her. We want them to feel cornered, to know they can't wiggle out of this. Emily nodded, her jaw set. I want her to see how much she's hurt us. She needs to feel it. As we drove to the cafe, the streets felt unusually quiet. I was grateful for the moment of calm before the storm, but I knew what was coming would shake everything up. The cafe was a cozy spot, bustling with people, and I smiled at the thought of how easily they would miss the dramatic showdown that was about to unfold. When we arrived, I scanned the room and spotted Jessica sitting at a table, a wave of familiarity washing over me. She looked relaxed, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware that I was about to walk her world upside down. I glanced at Emily and we exchanged a nod. It was time. We walked over to the table, my heart racing. "Hey Jess," I said, forcing a smile as I slid into the seat across from her. "Thanks for meeting us." "Of course, I thought we could catch up," she said, her voice light and cheerful, but I could see the glimmer of surprise in her eyes when she noticed Emily sitting next to me. "Hey, Emily," Jessica added, her smile faltering slightly. "What's going on?" "Actually, we have something important to talk about," I said, cutting her off before she could retreat into her usual lies. Jessica's expression shifted, her playful demeanor replaced by a hint of caution. "Okay, what's this about?" I took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline surge through me. "We know about the affair, Jessica, with Brian." The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica's eyes widened in shock, but I could see the gears turning in her mind, desperately searching for a way to spin her way out of this. "What? That's ridiculous. There's no way you could know that." She sputtered, her voice rising in pitch. Emily leaned forward, her voice steady. "We know, Jess. I confronted Brian and he admitted everything. You can't deny it anymore." Jessica's expression twisted into one of anger, her mask of innocence slipping away. "You're both just being paranoid. There's nothing going on." I stared at her, furious. "Cut the crap, Jessica. We've seen the evidence. You can't keep lying." I pulled out my phone and showed her the pictures I had taken of her with Brian at the bar. There it is, plain as day. Her face paled, and it felt good to see the confidence draining from her. "How could you do this to me? You're invading my privacy," she snapped, trying to deflect the blame. I felt a surge of anger clawing at my insides. "Invading your privacy? You're the one destroying our marriage. You're the one who betrayed me." Emily chimed in, her voice steady. "You think you can just treat us like this and walk away unscathed? You think you can play both of us and not face the consequences?" Jessica shifted in her seat, her bravado faltering. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was just feeling lost." "Lost?" I echoed, incredulous. You think that's an excuse for sleeping with my sister's boyfriend, for ruining my life?" She looked at me, tears brimming in her eyes. "I didn't want it to come to this. You were always busy with work and I felt abandoned. Brian was there for me when I needed someone. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. So you chose to betray me. You chose him over our marriage." Jessica's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She was trapped in her own lies, and it felt satisfying to watch her unravel. Emily leaned in closer, her voice low and dangerous. "You need to understand how much this hurts us, Jessica. You've destroyed not just your relationship with him, but our trust in you altogether." "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never meant to hurt you both." "Sorry isn't enough," I spat, anger boiling over. "You think we can just brush this under the rug? You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." At that moment, the cafe felt like it was spinning around us. I could see other patrons glancing our way, some whispering to each other. Jessica's shame was laid bare, and I reveled in the realization that she was finally facing the music. "Brian is a coward, and so are you," I said, my voice steady. "You both thought you could play with our lives without consequences, but you're wrong." Silence enveloped the table as Jessica's facade crumbled. "What do you want from me?" she finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I want you to understand the damage you've caused. I want you to see how your choices have hurt everyone involved." Emily folded her arms, her gaze unwavering. "You need to face Brian and tell him it's over. You can't keep lying to yourself or to anyone else anymore." Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're right. I'll end it with him. I'll tell him I can't do this anymore." The relief I felt was bittersweet. I knew that even if she did follow through, the damage was already done. There was no fixing our marriage. "Good," I said, my voice cold. "I hope you realize what you've lost today, not just me, but your friendship with Emily. You've shattered our trust, and it'll take more than a few apologies to mend it." "I'll do anything to make this right," she pleaded, but her words felt empty. "Save it," I replied sharply. "You've already made your choices, and now you'll have to live with the consequences. We're done here." As I stood up to leave, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and relief. I had confronted her, exposed her lies, and forced her to face the truth. But in that moment, it still felt like a hollow victory. Emily stood up beside me, her expression unreadable. We walked out of the cafe together, leaving Jessica sitting there, tears streaming down her face. Once outside, I took a deep breath, the cool air filling my lungs. "Thank you for doing this with me, Em. I know it wasn't easy." She nodded, her eyes still fierce. "I won't let her get away with hurting us, and neither should you. We're family, and we'll get through this together." As we walked away, I felt a sense of closure beginning to settle in, even if it was wrapped in a blanket of pain. I knew there was a long way to go, but I also knew that I wouldn't let Jessica or Brian ruin my life any longer. The storm had passed, but the aftermath was still ahead. I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing I had my sister by my side. In the days following our confrontation at the cafe, I felt like I was in a whirlwind of emotions. The initial relief of exposing Jessica's betrayal was quickly overshadowed by the reality of what lay ahead. I had confronted her, but the road to healing was going to be long and painful. Emily and I remained in close contact, sharing our feelings and making sure we were both handling the fallout of the situation. I knew that she was hurting just as much as I was. We had both invested so much time and love into our relationships, only to have them shattered by the betrayal of those we trusted. I decided to take a short break from work to focus on myself. I knew I needed time to process everything, to figure out how to move forward. During this time, I leaned on Emily for support. We spent hours talking, venting, and trying to make sense of the chaos that had erupted in our lives. After a few days of silence, Jessica finally reached out. She sent me a text message, and as I read it, a wave of mixed emotions washed over me. "Can we talk? I need to explain myself." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to cut her out entirely, but another part of me knew that I needed to hear what she had to say. I had to know if she had truly grasped the gravity of her actions. I decided to meet her. With one condition: Emily would be there. I wanted to make sure that Jessica was held accountable, and I didn't want her to manipulate the situation or try to play the victim. When the day came, I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach. We agreed to meet at a quieter cafe, one that had a private room where we could talk without prying eyes. Emily arrived first, and we exchanged nervous glances as we waited for Jessica. When Jessica walked in, her eyes were puffy and red, as if she had been crying. She looked vulnerable, but I wasn't about to let that sway me. I had seen her true colors, and I wasn't ready to forgive her just yet. "Thanks for meeting with me," she said, her voice shaky as she sat down. Neither Emily nor I responded. "I know you're both angry," she continued, "and I understand why. I messed up. I really messed up." I crossed my arms, trying to remain calm. "You think," I said, letting my sarcasm seep through my tone. "You shattered my life and betrayed my trust." "How could you do that?" Jessica looked down, her hands trembling. "I don't know. I lost myself for a while. Brian was there and I was feeling neglected. I thought it was just a fling, but it turned into something more." "At what point did you consider that your actions might hurt us?" Emily interjected, her voice steady. "Did you even think about the consequences?" Jessica opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. I could see the guilt and shame washing over her, but it barely scratched the surface of what I felt. "I thought you were better than this," I said, my voice cold. "You always claimed to be my partner, my best friend. This isn't just about a mistake, this was a choice. You chose to lie to me, to betray me." "I know," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, I didn't know how to come clean. I was afraid of what you would say, of how you'd react." "Yeah, well, you got that wrong," I shot back. "You should have thought about that before deciding to cheat. Relationships don't work like that, Jess." She looked at Emily, desperation in her eyes. "I never meant to hurt you either. I thought I was being supportive of you too, but I ended up falling for him. It was all so messed up." "Supportive? That's a joke," Emily said, her voice dripping with disbelief. "You were playing us both. You were never a supportive friend." "I know, I get it," Jessica cried, her voice rising. "I just want a chance to explain myself. I want to fix this." "Fix it?" I said, incredulous. "You think this can be fixed?" Jessica leaned forward, her eyes pleading. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'll end things with Brian. I'll go to counseling. I'll do everything you want." I felt a wave of confusion. Part of me wanted to be sympathetic, but the other part felt this overwhelming anger. "You can't just fix this with words, Jess. You can't just say you're sorry and think it'll make everything better. You've broken our trust, and that doesn't come back easily." Emily nodded in agreement. "You need to understand that trust is earned, not given freely. Right now, your actions have put a chasm between us that's going to take a long time to bridge, if it can be bridged at all." Jessica looked crushed, and I felt a twinge of sadness for her, but I quickly reminded myself of the pain she had inflicted on both of us. Trust was a fragile thing, and she had stomped all over it. "I want you to understand how serious this is," I continued, my voice steady. "You've hurt me in a way I never thought possible. I need time to think about what I want moving forward." Jessica nodded, tears continuing to fall down her cheeks. "I understand. Just know that I'm truly sorry, and I'll do anything to make this right." With that, the conversation shifted to logistics. We discussed how I needed space to process everything and what that would mean for our relationship moving forward. As we left the cafe, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. I was shocked at how Jessica had tried to plead her case, but I also felt a sense of empowerment in standing my ground. I wasn't ready to forgive her, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to. Emily and I walked silently back to the car, the air thick with tension. "What do you think?" she asked, breaking the silence as we climbed inside. "I don't know," I replied, running my fingers through my hair. "I'm still angry, but part of me feels like she's genuinely remorseful. But can we really trust that?" Emily shook her head. "It's going to take time, and I think you need to set your boundaries. Don't rush into anything just because she's saying what you want to hear. You need to protect yourself." "Yeah, you're right," I agreed, feeling the weight of her words. "I don't want to make any decisions until I'm ready." As I drove away, I reflected on the day's events. The confrontation hadn't given me the closure I had hoped for, but it had opened the door for a different kind of healing. A healing that would take time, patience, and perhaps a bit of forgiveness. All I knew was that I wasn't about to let Jessica walk back into my life without consequences. I was ready to take charge of my future, whatever that might look like. The journey was far from over, but I was determined to find my way back to a place of self-respect and strength. I owed it to myself and to Emily to rise above the chaos. As the days turned into weeks, the aftermath of the confrontation with Jessica began to settle in. I took a step back from my relationship with her, giving myself the breathing room I needed to process everything that had happened. Emily and I grew closer through the chaos, relying on each other to navigate the emotional wreckage left behind. In the ensuing silence, I focused on self-care and reflection. I started seeing a therapist, someone who helped me untangle the feelings of betrayal and anger that had become my constant companions. It was a journey that felt daunting, but I knew it was necessary. I wanted to reclaim my life, to find out who I was outside of the pain that had threatened to define me. During one session, I spoke about the difficulty of moving forward. I can't shake the feeling that it'll always be there, this betrayal, this hurt, I admitted, my voice thick with emotion. How do I get past it? My therapist looked at me thoughtfully. Healing takes time. It's okay to feel angry or hurt, but you also have to decide what you want for your future. Are you willing to forgive? Are you ready to let go? The question lingered with me long after our session ended. Forgiveness felt like a distant concept, something I had to grapple with. I knew it wouldn't come easy, but I also understood that holding on to anger would only weigh me down further. Meanwhile, Emily had taken matters into her own hands. She confronted Brian and ended things with him decisively. I was proud of her for standing her ground. She deserved so much better than the way he treated her. As we shared our healing journeys, I saw her grow stronger, and it inspired me to do the same. I eventually decided to meet Jessica one last time. I needed clarity, a finality that would help me close this chapter completely. I organized to meet her at a park, a neutral setting where we could talk without the pressure of a cafe atmosphere. When the day came, I felt a mixture of apprehension and resolve. Jessica arrived, looking slightly better than the last time I'd seen her. Her tear-streaked cheeks were gone, replaced with a more composed version of herself. "Thanks for meeting with me," she said softly, her eyes searching mine for any sign of warmth. "Let's cut to the chase, Jess. I need to know if you truly understand the impact of what you did," I said, my voice firm. "I've spent so much time reflecting," she replied, her voice trembling. "I know I hurt you deeply, and I'm sorry. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. I messed up in a way that I'll always regret." I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of sympathy and anger. "Do you understand how that betrayal affected my life? How it changed my relationship with Emily? This isn't just about us anymore. This has rippled through our lives." "I know," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. "I didn't think about the consequences. I was selfish, and I'm so sorry." I paused, my heart torn between the desire to forgive and the weight of the hurt. "I need to be honest with you. I can't just move on like nothing happened. I can't pretend to be friends. I need to protect myself." She nodded, her gaze steady. "I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right now or ever. I just want you to know how genuinely sorry I am." "I appreciate you saying that," I replied, feeling an unexpected sense of relief. "But I have to focus on my own healing now. I need to let go of this anger, and that means letting you go too." "Of course," she said quietly. "I hope you find happiness wherever that leads you." With that, I said my final goodbyes. It felt like a weight had lifted off my shoulders. After everything, I could finally start to move forward. In the months that followed, I dedicated myself to my healing journey. I leaned on Emily for support, but I also found new hobbies and interests that reignited my passion for life. I started running again, a habit I had abandoned during the chaos. I joined a book club, finding joy in the stories and new friendships. Slowly but surely, I began to reclaim my sense of self. Sometimes, moments would creep in where I'd feel anger or sadness about what happened, but I learned to acknowledge those feelings without letting them consume me. I reminded myself that healing was not linear. It was a winding path with ups and downs. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over me. I had survived a storm, and while the scars of betrayal would always remain, I was learning how to live with them. I realized that the experience had taught me invaluable lessons about trust, love, and resilience. I learned to prioritize my own well-being and to set boundaries that protected my heart. I understood that forgiveness was possible, but it had to be on my terms and it would take time. I reflected on my relationship with Emily, grateful for her unwavering support. We had both emerged stronger, and I knew our bond would only deepen from here on out. As I moved forward into the next chapter of my life, I carried these lessons with me. I was ready to embrace the future, whatever it may hold. I knew that I was capable of love again, but more importantly, I was learning to love myself first. With that realization, I felt a spark of hope and excitement for the adventures that lay ahead.